Do you guys mind if I take this? Sorry, kind of rude, but hello. I'm really busy right now. Okay, listen, I just want yellow flowers, a white icing, and I wanted to say, sorry, best wishes, Suzanne. We will miss you. Best wishes, Suzanne. Underneath that, we will miss you. Okay, thanks. And do me a favor, please don't call me again for a couple hours. Thanks. All right. Well, sorry about that. Amazing. The technology has advanced. Well, wouldn't you assume that my simple order to the baker would have come out just the way you pictured it, I hope? And by showing this cake, I don't mean to say, isn't that baker stupid? And I don't mean to say, we shouldn't make dumb mistakes like that. I'm showing this cake partly because I just love it, and partly because this is my reason for being here today. Communicating to understanding, it's hard. Even the simplest things can go wrong, and especially the things that you never question. So these were the days, you may remember. My TV was about that size. You may have had a bigger one, but we had dials on our televisions. Do you remember getting up out of your chair to go change the channel? Well, Magnavox was changing all that. Magnavox came along with a set-top converter box and this newfangled gizmo called a remote control. And when Tim and I came into the internship, our first project was to update this existing manual for the new version of this newfangled product. So, and believe me, this internship was close to my heart my whole life. I've carried this with me. This is what we were given. And you'll see here the inside. Corey, I know you're going, oh my God. It's black and white and brown. And it's right justified columns, walls of text. And Tim and I just dug into this thing like, oh yes, we can make this so much better. And we had a ball. Remember, these were the days before we even had access to any kind of desktop publishing. So we literally had tape and scissors and pencils. And we created a new version, and I'm telling you, I thought that the sun revolved around it. It was so, and this was going to be our portfolio pieces that was going to get us that job that we wanted so much. And we just poured hundreds of hours into this revision. It had color. It had step-cut tabs. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. Now, Karen Szymanski, being the wise leader that she was, and there were no usability labs, UX had not been invented yet, but Karen knew that communicating to understanding is difficult. And she said, let's go see what Mary's doing over lunch hour. And so Mary came over, and we're going to set up a little reenactment now of our mock usability lab with a little help from Lisa. This is pretty much what our usability lab looked like over that lunch hour right here. Now, Tim and I, you remember this, Tim? We had strict instructions. This is Mary, our tester, Our TV is right out here. You don't mind being the TV for a moment. Can you kind of play that, you know? A few deep breaths and, okay, you're the TV. And Tim and I are sitting behind Mary, and Karen had informed us that the way this works, you don't tell the person anything, you just observe. So I'm sitting there waiting for the praise to flow about how beautiful this thing is. So here's Mary. Mary's a bright person, I should tell you. And she's got our mock-up, and she's looking at the first page, and okay, and she's got the remote, and I'm sitting back there going, but it never occurred to me that Mary would need to be told to point the remote at the box. Tim and I, at least I, made a huge assumption and never realized it. So much for my pride. Thank you, Lisa. But that moment of aha has stuck with me my entire career as a tech writer. And I can't say that I've always been able to identify my assumptions. That's not really the lesson, because I don't think any of us ever can. But the fact that we make assumptions that we don't realize was an eye-opener, and that we need to get that feedback. You never think, I better go show the baker a picture of what I want. You assume. It's so easy to do, and we all do it a lot. So what I'm saying is that I've been on both sides of that phone call. We are all that caller and that baker. In other words, we're all Abbott and Costello. Last August is one of the examples that came to me. My husband and I have a basement apartment that we rent out in our home. We like to call it the lower level. And we had a new tenant move in. Bright guy, I knew him, we had worked together, and thought, oh, this is gonna be perfect. And he traveled a lot, he's telling us as he's unpacking, and we said, well, why don't you park in our driveway so that you have easy access to your entrance in the back when you're gonna be here. But if you're gonna be in France for a couple weeks, would you park out on the road? You know, we might decide it's time to clean the garage. Could happen. So we'd like you to leave the driveway clear for us. Fine, everything's fine. And of course, this is a picture of what we communicated to him. And I know that we said it clearly. I was there. And there's no way that he could have understood this. But in fact, the next time he took a trip, this is exactly what he did. He left his car parked in our driveway, and wouldn't you know, that was the time that our neighbors had a big truck scheduled to come in and needed to get in our driveway to go cut down a tree. So we had to go scramble around, find Kyle's key, unlock the car, set off the car alarm, screech to the whole quiet, peaceful neighborhood until we figured out all you have to do is put in the ignition. Now we know. And it's a silly example in a way. I mean, there was no harm done. There were no consequences to speak of. But it just illustrated for me how often I take for granted that what I've said is clear. This is part of our theme for the next 2 days. This easy phrase, communicate to understanding, it seems like, yeah, that's what we do. But there's a lot to making it happen. One example that came to me was that I had surgery last year. And it was not a big deal as surgeries go. My surgeon does these 100 times a year. Arthroscopic surgery is amazing, and you're in, you're out, but it was my knee, and nobody had ever cut into my knee before. So as my nurse is wheeling me down the hall, and I'm saying, would you please make sure he cuts the right knee? And lucky for me, my nurse is handy with a pen. She knew that I was Abbott and my doctor was Costello. There are times when you're working on something too important to take chances. Life, a lot of times, is pretty much like a game of Chinese telephone or who's on first routine. So very often, our messages somehow turn into something different by the time they're received. This is how I think about the goal. To communicate to understanding, you've got person A, person B, and they're just trying to get really clear. Can you see that bottom row back there? How about now? Until they exactly understand. I see now, I get what you're seeing. That's the goal. But sometimes the consequences are truly disastrous. I didn't know about this story until recently. Imagine that a lot of you know about this. I'm sure that many of you have seen the spectacular photos that have come back from the Hubble. But when it first went up there, did you know that something was very wrong? After 3 billion, which was something in those days, and 15 years of research and development, it went up April of 1990, and it sent back this. This is not what people were expecting. Needless to say, NASA was not a happy place. Fuzzy stars were not at all what they were looking for. What went wrong was in the tool that was used to test the 8-foot mirror, the main device that was going to create these spectacular images. The metering rod was 1.3 millimeters off, the size of a piece of rice. But in this kind of optics, this could have been 1,000 miles. So it's out there floating in space. It's sending back crap. You do not want to be this guy. Charlie Pellerin had been involved all the way through, and he figured out what had gone wrong. And what I'm going to show you the next couple slides have a lot of words that I'm going to read verbatim because I found Charlie's words so moving, and I wanted you to know that I'm not making this up. Although many of you do already know the story. This is what Charlie Pellerin, the NASA director of astrophysics at the time the Hubble went up, had to say. After doing some research, the problem with Hubble wasn't merely a technical failure, and he had by now figured out this problem with the metering rod. But he figured out something bigger was going on at NASA. It's the same thing that happened with the fatal explosion of Space Shuttle Challenger. It was a social shortfall. Staff were being hammered all the time under the pressure from Washington to launch, launch, launch. So I'm seeing heads going, You've heard that maybe from your companies. We've got to launch, get that book out, well, it used to be book. Whatever it is that you're creating now, there's always some pressure to get it out. Well, at NASA, the pressure couldn't have been more intense. This is Charlie now looking back on what it was like during those days right before the Hubble went up. The guy responsible for the Hubble mirror was working under great stress because NASA was angry about costly delays and threatening to put a competitor's mirror in the telescope, which would have been humiliating for our contractor. A hostile environment had been created. The contractor told us about any problem at his peril. And you may notice some similarity between these bolded words and our words that interfere with good communication. And the folks working at NASA were breathing this stuff in the air every day. How many of us can do our best work in that kind of a situation? And I know I've worked at places that have been somewhere on a scale, nothing maybe as drastic, but I think there's always some degree of stress and some combination of these things going on in any workplace, and we still have to communicate to understanding. Charlie goes on. It's difficult to overstate what a disaster this was. 2 senior staffers had to be removed from their offices by guards and taken to alcohol rehab. These are PhDs sitting at their desks getting drunk. That's how bad the stress was. So Charlie then gets called in to the Congresswoman's office, the Congresswoman who's in charge of NASA appropriations. And she, after she gets done throwing newspapers with all the headlines, is pounding him in the chest. He said he's got her spit on his glasses. She's saying, "You will never get another penny for your precious Hubble. You're done." That's one kind of communication. I guess she was understood, but that's not what we're talking about. The Congresswoman did not know Charlie. Charlie fixed the Hubble. And after he was promoted twice and decorated with every medal NASA has to give, and decided he didn't like it up there in those political echelons, he moved on and taught at the University of Colorado for a while in their business school. And he researched leadership. And he researched what had happened with the space shuttle. And he put together a program that he then created training for, and he made a company and went around and trained companies. Now, he didn't use the phrase communicating to understanding, but essentially he was training companies in how to create an environment where people can communicate to understanding. And it involves respect, and it involves all kinds of things that go into a positive, supportive environment that make it possible. So NASA got word, said, "Charlie, will you come back and teach us?" So Charlie not only fixed the Hubble, he's now fixing NASA. Charlie didn't want the world to miss this. Charlie knew that we needed help, we needed training. He knew that we're all Abbott and Costello. And you may not feel that you have the clout to change your corporate culture, but I think that most of us have more potential to influence than we step up to. So if Charlie Pellerin were to walk into your job tomorrow, what opportunities might he see? And what's keeping you from doing what Charlie might do? Now, I want to tell you a little bit about some TechCom miracle workers that I work with now in Portland. A small agency called Kaya Communications. They have been doing work since the mid-1990s. It was started by a husband and wife who'd been working for companies. They wanted more balance in their life. They wanted to work on interesting projects, and they wanted to work with interesting people. So they started this company. And by 2008, they had 5 subcontractors working for them. This is a TechCom company. They were doing a lot of white papers and still do, and a lot of other things, whatever came along. The type of thing that all of us have done for many years. We say, sure, I can do that, and we do. So 2008, they have 5 subcontractors, and many of you will remember that was about the time that the economy started getting especially tough for our profession. This region has been especially hard hit, and I know many of you are still feeling it. Well, they were feeling it in Portland too. But Kaya Communications, expecting in 2008 to take a dip, say, oh, we're going to have some time, we're going to have a dip in work, let's plan for that. It went the other way. And it hasn't stopped. They have 28 contractors working for them, and I'm one. And they just keep growing, and they love what they do. All of us are independent. Every single one of us is self-employed, and we work from home. This is part of our group. I had been working with them for a year. This is the first time I met almost all of them face to face. Everything we do is from home. We're using all the technologies, all the tools, the WebEx, the phones, the email, all the things that you do to collaborate, to work, and many of you do work from home. It's not easy. You have to do extra efforts to build those relationships and to communicate to understanding. But we like this model, and we enjoy working with each other, and we want this company to survive and thrive. So it's not like we have something special that other teams don't have, but we're doing everything we can to keep our jobs going, and that means to support each other. And so we have editors, we have writers, we have graphic designers, we have project managers on this Kaya team. And people leave, people get mad, people have fights, people get their feelings hurt, just like any other work group. But we have, I think, one of the most, for me, my experience, one of the most healthy, functional groups that I've ever been a part of, because when those things happen, we pick up the phone. I'll say, I really marked up your draft. I hope it's not overwhelming. Don't take it to heart. It's, let's talk about it. A lot of support, a lot of respect. Anyway, this is my team. This is Karen Ronning, who started the company. You can see how I feel about her. That's a halo in case you can't see it in the back. This is what it's like to work for them. Intel is the biggest client, and Intel, you may know about the Intel Inside, the little chips in your computers. Intel's headquarters is just outside of Portland, and they have 100,000 employees around the world. We have 1-hour kickoff meetings for every white paper that we do for this Intel team. And Bernard, you were talking the other day, where are you? You were talking yesterday about meetings. How much money is sitting in that room? When we have a kickoff meeting with Kaya and the Intel team, how much money is sitting in that hour? It's not a room. This is our room. Our room is the world. But we've got our client project manager here. We've got our Kaya editor and note taker. We need our note taker. We've got our SMEs. And one of the biggest challenges many of us have communicating to understanding is the simple, what on earth did that guy just say? Because the Indian accent, the Irish accent, the Israeli accent, it is truly impossible sometimes even to figure out what words they're saying, let alone, even if I understood the words, I still wouldn't know what they're saying. But was that microprocessor he just said? So this is our world as technical communicators. This is what we're all up against. One of the tools that we use on the Kaya team is a call recorder. We make recordings of that hour meeting, and we transcribe them and we share them with each other, and we say, hey, here are my notes. Is this what you had? Because we have to get every bit of our money's worth out of that 1 hour. And this is what we produce. For the most part, we produce white papers. And I would like to have you role play just for a minute the people that we write these white papers for, because this is why Kaya has grown and never has to worry so far when Intel cuts, they are not cutting Kaya. And this is why. This white paper about data center strategy is written for you, and you all are the IT support folks at your company. You're in a mid-sized company. You're the guys who are responsible when somebody's computer breaks, when the network goes down, when you have to update the whole company to Windows 8. That's your job. And your boss is going to come to you and say, hey, we've got to figure out where to put a new data center. You know, the building where all the servers are for the company. Where in the world, anywhere in the world, where should we put our data center? And you are going to say, who could tell me how to think that through? And the people you're going to turn to are the Intel IT folks. The Intel IT folks have a 12-page white paper, and they are going to talk you through, because they are always going to be 2 steps ahead of you. And you are going to look to them as a role model. Okay, you're going to have a water source nearby. You're going to need an airport nearby. You're going to need an educated workforce, but not too expensive. Hopefully a place where you're not going to get shot while you're building. And by the way, are there schools there? Because if not, you'll have to build a school. Intel will tell you in detail, because they've done it and they know what you need to look for. You better believe their white papers are in demand. This is content marketing at its finest. They're not selling anything in this white paper, but they are top of mind. And boy, is that valuable. And they care about their content. They go to Kaya, because Kaya is going to give them something well-written. Have you worked for clients who don't care? I have. Just get it out. But I want it to be good. Don't make it too good. Anybody work in that environment? Is that a killer? These guys go to Kaya because Kaya is going to make it good. They have it down. 8 weeks beginning to start. They know how it works. They are on top of it. And you're going to have a good product at the end that people want. To me, this is a great success story for our profession. There are opportunities out there. Your content has to be in demand. You have to be filling a need. You have to be answering a burning question. It's not enough just to slap a bunch of stuff up on that website. But if you know what somebody wants to know and you can deliver it, there's demand. It's got to be that baker again. Listen, could you just make a really plain cake this time, please? just put a little bit of decoration and nothing on it. Right, thanks.
On the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third. That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellows on the St. Louis team. I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third. You know the fellow's names? Yes. Well, then who's playing first? Yes. I mean the fellow's name on first base. Who? The fellow playing first base for St. Louis. Who? The guy on first base. Who is on first? Well, what are you asking me for? I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, who is on first? I'm asking you who's on first. That's the man's name. That's whose name? Yes. Well, go ahead and tell me. Who? The guy on first. Who? The first base. Who is on first? Have you got a first baseman on first? Certainly. Then who's playing first? Absolutely. When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money? Every dollar of it. Why not? The man's entitled to it. Who is? Yes. So who gets it? Why should he? Sometimes his wife comes down and collects it. Whose wife? Yes.
We may all be Abbott and Costello, but if we make that effort to break through to understanding, nobody has to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
You're welcome.
Thank you.